Honourable Minister, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have you join us today for our session on leaving no one behind, driving digital inclusion for the underserved in Africa. My name is Kim Viljoen, and I am the Market Engagement Director for the GSMA Digital Inclusion Team, and it's a pleasure to have you all today. Across Sub-Saharan Africa, more people are using mobile internet than ever before. And while this is promising, millions are being left behind. Most of the unconnected are already covered by mobile broadband, yet they face other barriers preventing them from adopting and benefiting from mobile internet. Those who are most likely to be unconnected are typically women, rural and low-income populations, and people with disabilities, the very segments that are the most likely to benefit from connectivity. Today's session brings together governments and mobile operators to explore how we work together to address the gaps and ensure that no one is left behind. To begin, I'd like to hand over to John Giusti, GSMA Chief Regulatory Officer, to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim, and I'm really pleased to be here in the M4D Theater. I think some of the most important discussions here at MWC Kigali are happening here. So Excellencies, honorable guests, it really is a pleasure to welcome you to this session today, and I have the distinct honor of introducing our first keynote speaker. Because I think what we're talking about here in digital inclusion really is underpinning every single thing we're talking about across the content of MWC Kigali. Without digital inclusion, everything else we talk about is meaningless, especially for those people who fall into that category of excluded. And I really am so pleased that we have her Honourable Minister Paula Ingabire with us today. I have seen her on many platforms within Rwanda and on international stages where she really is one of the strongest voices out there for digital inclusion. She has been a long-term partner of GSMA and, of course, a gracious host to all of us here in Kigali. I think last night's dinner was a further testament to the warm welcome we get when we come here. She is also a true believer in the power of technology and what it can do and why it is so important to have in the hands of people. And I think has really been at the helm of leading an important digital transformation for Rwanda. I think importantly, she has shown a commitment to making sure that all of the citizens of Rwanda, and I think in fact all of the citizens of Africa, are part of the digital journey. And I think particularly as we move into the era of AI, there is all the more important that we move more and more people into the umbrella of digital. But we know that the reality today is that a digital divide persists, and it is stronger here in Africa than other regions. But it is not limited to Africa. So I think we can talk about Africa today, but we can also talk about the global challenges of connecting the unconnected as part of this discussion. So I want to thank all of the industry and government leaders who are here today. I want to thank all of the participants as well. But I particularly look forward to hearing the thoughts of Her Excellency, the Honourable Minister, on what we can do to address the digital divide in Africa, industry, government, and other players in the digital ecosystem. So please join me in welcoming the Honourable Minister Paula Ingabire to the stage.
Thank you very much, John. Good morning. And thank you for joining us for this very important conversation about Africa's digital future. The theme today of the plenary that we are having right now, Leaving No One Behind, challenges us in many ways to reflect on what kind of digital transformation we are all building. Because true progress is not only about who moves the fastest, but about how many we're able to carry forward. Today we face a paradox on the African continent. We've achieved so much progress, yet when you think about the gaps that remain, it feels like a daunting task for many of us. When we look at the recent GSMA report for Sub-Saharan Africa, we're seeing over 500 million Africans that are now connected to mobile internet. And this number seemed impossible a decade ago. Network coverage reaches over 85% of our people across the continent. And yet, I think as was shared earlier, 87% of our people still offline live within areas that are already covered. So the challenge is no longer about coverage. It's about capacity, affordability, and ability. And those who remain disconnected, when we look around us, are the poorest, the least educated, and those who live in the remotest parts of our countries. And most often, I think what we see, it's the women and people with disabilities. If I share a little bit about Rwanda's approach to meaningful connectivity, and I believe for every one of you in this room, when we talk about meaningful connectivity, it's about prioritizing reach, resilience, and redundancy. We also recognize that market forces alone cannot serve every community. For many of our countries, we're tapping into the Universal Access Fund in really closing some of these gaps. Yet what we're seeing is that there still remain a lot of gaps that are requiring that we're very innovative on not just how we use the Universal Access Fund, but also what other resources we're able to mobilize to close on the remaining gaps. If we look at just our Universal Access Funds, it could take many of our countries more than 20 years to close these gaps. And I think that's the urgent task that we all have when we're thinking about closing these gaps. For Rwanda, over the past 5 years, talking about the Universal Access Fund and what we've been able to do creatively has been around deploying about 230 new towers in commercially unviable locations. And what we've been exploring is, covering the, fully covering the capital expenditure and the first years of operation. But even with that, a bit of creativity, we still have, over 800 plus towers that need to be built if we're to close the gap on coverage before we even start talking about the gap of inclusion. And I think the guiding principle remains clear that connectivity must be meaningful and inclusive. Every connection must translate into participation, and every participant must benefit from the opportunity that we provide them with. Now, leaving the subject of coverage without affordability is incomplete access. And I think for many of you in the different sessions you've been speaking at or that you've attended, this is something that has been coming up. Through the Connect Rwanda initiative, we tested different ideas from delivering smartphones that are worth about $80 and figuring out how to subsidize them heavily to $16. And this has benefited about 1.2 million households, particularly in the rural areas. And what this has given is that many of the people that could not access different services that we provided are now able to do so. As we build on this success, Rwanda is extending this initiative, and very soon we are going to be launching a program that's very specific for people with disabilities, ensuring that truly, leaving no one behind is happening. Under the new phase, what we are looking to provide is about 95% subsidies for these people with disabilities and making sure that they have the right devices that will help them to thrive in the digital economy. Now, connectivity and affordability must be paired with digital skills and confidence to consume and use these digital services. Yesterday, during the opening ceremony, I spoke about the Digital Ambassadors Program, where we've been able to train over 4.5 million Rwandans. And the work is to ensure that in the next 4 years, every Rwandan has the basic digital literacy skills that are required to allow them to thrive in the digital era. And we're starting to see tangible outcomes with that. I want to speak on another aspect beyond connectivity, beyond the towers, beyond affordability and digital literacy is content. For Rwanda, we have many of our services that are provided online. But this also means that the services are designed in a way that caters for inclusion, in a way that caters for the local context, and that also means that we're training citizens to be able to self-serve when they're accessing many of these digital platforms. The last aspect that I'll touch on is digital inclusion also means financial inclusion. Our latest FinScope 2024 report illustrates that we have made some progress, but we still have unfinished business. Today, 85.3% of Rwandan adults, that's about 7 million Rwandans, are digitally, financially included. And this is thanks to the mobile money services that have been able to close a big gap for us. And when we talk about 85.3%, this is really up from about 46% in 2016. And so you can see the linkage between the mobile industry enabling other industries such as the financial services industry. But as we talk about the 85.3%, it also means that 14.7% remain excluded. And that number, in a way, also mirrors the pattern that we see across Africa, where 85% of excluded lives are in rural areas, 2/3 are women, and half are the youth. And more than 1 in 3 lacks access to a mobile phone or any other digital device. And so these numbers remind us that both digital and financial inclusion are two sides of the same coin, and closing both must be our collective priority. Yesterday, as we listened to the keynote addresses that were delivered before the morning opening ceremony, we had different projections from the World Bank projection, around 10% increase in broadband penetration that can boost GDP by 1%. So think about that. When we have every woman, every rural entrepreneur gaining access to digital tools, productivity rises, markets expand, and resilience grows. Every person connected is not a cost. They're an engine of growth, they're a source of innovation, and they're also a node of dignity. Let's talk about our young population, our youth, 70% that are under 30 years. If we give this generation the tools to learn, to build, and to connect, Africa will leap ahead. But if we fail to close the gap or the digital divide, we risk having a generation that is disconnected from opportunity and invisible to the progress that we've all shared over the last 1.5 days. So to close the remaining gaps, we must act boldly and collectively, making access affordable, whether it's working with manufacturers, operators, and financiers, whether it's investing in digital literacy and trust, which is crucial for adoption, designing for inclusion by ensuring that our platforms and apps and content are accessible for all, reforming policies and regulations to enable innovation. Inclusion must be viewed as a strategy, not a subsidy. And lastly, we must also foster partnerships, because inclusion is not a single stakeholder or agency's task. It's a national priority, it's a continental mission, and all stakeholders must share the risks and the rewards. So as I conclude, let's be reminded that leaving no one behind isn't just a moral commitment, it's the foundation of Africa's prosperity. The digital divide is not a destiny, it's a design problem, and design is in our hands as we gather here in these rooms. So let's design a future where every African, rural or urban, rich or poor, male or female, has equal access to the digital age. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, it's always our biggest pleasure having you here, but it's also our biggest challenge because it's hard to follow when you've hit all the right notes. But thank you anyway. For those of you tweeting, I think one thing I'll repeat there is every unconnected person is not a cost, they're an agent of growth. I know there were other wonderful elements you highlighted as well, but thank you so much again for your contributions and your continued partnership and support for the work we do. For the first time, the State of Mobile Internet Connectivity Report has been published as a 6-part series, the last of which on the affordability of internet-enabled devices and data was published just last week. And so today I'm going to share a few key insights for the Sub-Saharan Africa region from that report series. As of 2024, 25% of the Sub-Saharan Africa population, or 300 million people, were connected and using mobile internet. However, as mentioned by Honourable Minister Paula, a large majority remain unconnected. This includes those who are not covered by mobile broadband. In Sub-Saharan Africa, the coverage gap, or the population who are not covered by mobile broadband, stands at 10%, or 120 million people. It's the region with the largest coverage gap, but I'll come back later with a positive note on trends. The largest proportion of the unconnected, however, is those who are not covered by mobile broadband, who are covered by mobile broadband, but not using mobile internet. This usage gap in Sub-Saharan Africa is 65%, or 790 million people. However, Sub-Saharan Africa is also the region, one of the regions with a very high proportion of the population under the age of 18. So if we consider only adults aged 18 and over, we see that the connected population increases from 25% to 42% of adults aged 18 and over who are currently using mobile internet. The usage gap for the adult population stands at 48%. That still translates to about 350 million adults who are currently not using mobile internet across the region. And because those are the ones that are actually covered. So this, therefore, needs to be the biggest focus because it is the biggest opportunity for our industry. As mentioned earlier, we continue to see growth in connectivity across the region. The connected population across Sub-Saharan Africa, in black at the bottom, has been increasing, but only marginally every year. Promisingly, though, the coverage gap in light blue has been reducing from 13% in 2023 to 10% in 2024, much to the efforts of partners and organizations like the Ministry of Rwanda making efforts on that rural coverage in particular. However, with slow progress on internet adoption, this means that the usage gap in darker blue at the top has been increasing rather than decreasing. So while improvements in coverage across the region are still needed, our industry needs to focus on addressing the other barriers that are preventing people from coming online. Importantly, these barriers are experienced more acutely by different underserved segments. And so connectivity varies by demographic with significant gender and rural-urban gaps. For example, in black, we see that those living in rural areas across Sub-Saharan Africa are 48% less likely than those in urban areas to use mobile internet. But positively, we are seeing a downward trend in that gap across the region. In terms of the gender gap, women in Sub-Saharan Africa are 29% less likely than their male counterparts to use mobile internet. But we've seen notable improvement there again, from 32% in 2023. While the gender gap across the region is narrowing, there are still over 200 million women in Sub-Saharan Africa who are not using mobile internet. So we still have some way to go there. So why are people not, in particular, why are the underserved not adopting mobile internet? What are the key barriers preventing them from doing so? Firstly, awareness of mobile internet is relatively high across the region. So typically, across most of the markets in Sub-Saharan Africa, it plateaus at around 70 to 80% are aware of mobile internet. And this varies quite significantly across different markets. And reaching that last segment of the population with awareness of internet is challenging. But importantly, beyond just awareness of the internet, many of the underserved don't understand how mobile and mobile internet can actually benefit them, how it can support their daily lives, their livelihoods. And this affects how relevant they perceive the internet and internet-enabled devices to be. This ultimately prevents their adoption. However, for those who are aware of mobile internet, the top barriers to adoption are affordability, particularly of internet-enabled devices, literacy and digital skills, and safety and security. And these have consistently appeared as ranked as top barriers for some years now. It's worth noting that these barriers do change slightly as people progress along the mobile internet customer journey. So for those across the region who are already using mobile internet, the top 3 barriers for not using it more are, again, affordability, but this time also of data, and then connectivity experience, and again, we see safety and security coming up as the 3rd top barrier there. These barriers to further use also tend to vary, again, quite significantly across different markets in the region. The GSMA is working closely with the mobile industry to help address these barriers. So firstly, we lead the Handset Affordability the GSMA Handset Affordability Coalition, and we support a wider network of partners to implement handset affordability interventions that truly meet the underserved. That's a very important point we want to make. We're also supporting over 50 partners globally, or we have supported over 50 partners globally to use our free mobile internet skills training toolkit to train more than 80 million people across 40 markets, building digital skills and confidence to use the internet. And Minister, you've mentioned that that's an important complement to handset affordability interventions. I mentioned earlier that these barriers are felt even more acutely by different underserved groups. So when we look at the affordability challenge in particular, an entry-level internet-enabled device in Sub-Saharan Africa, sorry, there's something going on with the animations. Apologies, I'm going to just read the data to you anyway, so follow closely. An entry-level internet-enabled device in Sub-Saharan Africa, which in 2024 was around $39 US, costs the equivalent of 87% of the poorest 20%, average income of the poorest 20% of the population. That's compared to only 26% for the average income for the total population. For women, this cost represents around 32% of their monthly income in comparison to only 23% for men. A device is generally considered affordable if it costs roughly 20% or less of average monthly income. So affordability of internet-enabled devices must be a key focus if we want to close the usage gap in Sub-Saharan Africa. As of 2024, 69% of the usage gap do not own a mobile phone. And it's important to note that the other 31% of the usage gap likely own a basic mobile phone without internet capabilities. Bridging the usage gap starts by getting affordable internet-enabled devices into people's hands. Then even among those who already use mobile internet, 60% are still doing so on feature phones or 3G smartphones, while just 40% use 4G or 5G smartphones. By comparison, 84% of mobile internet users globally are using the internet on a 4G or 5G smartphone. So while feature phones and smart feature phones remain important for getting people online in Sub-Saharan Africa, we also need to support their evolution towards 4G and 5G smartphones. This ensures that they can enjoy richer, more meaningful experiences of the internet and stay connected as 3G networks are phased out across the region. Importantly, addressing handset affordability alone is not enough. People also need to understand why the internet is relevant, what it can enable them, and have the skills and confidence to use it effectively and safely and securely. Lastly, while closing the mobile internet usage gap will be a challenge, the potential socio-economic benefits of doing so are substantial. The GSMA estimates that closing the usage gap in Sub-Saharan Africa between 2023 and 2030 could generate an additional $625 billion in GDP, of which $170 billion would come from closing the gender gap alone. Beyond economic gains, closing both the usage and gender gaps would have a positive social impact for the underserved populations, support broader societal and economic development, and contribute directly to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Those are just some of the key insights from the GSMA State of Mobile Internet Connectivity report this year, particularly on Sub-Saharan Africa. Now we'll turn to the people who are actually driving the change on the ground. And this is a part that I always find really exciting as well. So I'm going to invite my colleague Naomi Wangui, who is our Senior Market Engagement Manager for the GSMA Digital Inclusion team, and she will be moderating a panel with some of our mobile operator partners who will share their real-world experiences of tackling the barriers to digital inclusion. And really excitingly, they're going to say what's working, but they're also going to share what's not working. And I love it when people are happy to share what's not working and what the lessons are that they've learned along the way. No pressure, guys. So Naomi, esteemed panelists, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon and welcome to our panel session. My name is Naomi Wangui. I'm the Senior Market Engagement Manager under the Digital Inclusion team in the GSMA. I am joined by my esteemed panelists. From my left, is Nompilo Morafo, who is a Group Chief Sustainability and Corporate Affairs Officer at the MTN Group. In the middle, we have Sandra Handou, who is a Group Consumer Marketing Director, Axian Telecom. And at the far end, we have Sylvester Moyo, Executive Head of Terminals at the Vodacom Group. Please let's welcome our esteemed panelists. All right, to start our conversation today, would like to hear from our panelists, what are some of the strategies that you have found most effective in overcoming non-infrastructure barriers such as affordability, digital skills, or social norms that prevent underserved groups from adopting mobile internet? Additionally, it would be really good to hear what approaches have not worked well and why. And to start us off, Nompilo, you're right next to me. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting MTN to this panel. So MTN has got a belief system. We say everyone deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. So for us, that translates into a very simple approach into how we run a business, meaning development for MTN is as important as a commercial priority. So whatever opportunity we go into, we put a mindset on development on it. So that becomes very important to us. I think Honourable Minister spoke a lot and came on stats in terms of coverage, affordability, connectivity, etc. I will not repeat, but if I look at projects that have worked on the ground for MTN, it's always been the ones where we started with integration from design perspective. So I'll make an example that if you go to markets like, I'll make an example of Zambia, for instance, where under Network as a Service, we had a project where we rolled out solar to communities. It came with devices, and it came with digital skilling. The reason why we did that is because we did a lot of research on that community itself, and we look at the gaps of why they're not adopting the internet. By integrating all three, we made sure that adoption in that market was a bit more sustainable than the other markets we've seen. So for me, energy becomes very important. It's something that we don't talk about a lot. In the markets where we are, people don't have electricity. So it costs us a lot of money to actually be able to roll out all the types of adoption tools that people require to be on the internet. What has not worked? I think it was a surprise to us. We have a project on digital skilling, like it's across all markets. It's in 12 markets currently. It hasn't moved as fast as we thought we would, because it doesn't have millions of people that are actually being trained on the platform. It's a platform, it's free. But when we did our research with the CEOs on the ground, we found out that young people go on the platform, but they just don't finish a course. And another thing that we've noticed is that people report on numbers of how many people actually visited the platform, not people that actually completed a course. Or more importantly, after you finish the course, did you even get a job? What did you do with the skill? So we've paced ourselves to say, really, if we're going to talk about these topics and how we roll out these projects, we should have a mindset that talks into impact more than numbers. So we're not longer counting how many people actually visited the platform. It's about how many people got trained, how many people actually graduated and got a nano degree that we wanted them to get, and where are they right now? So the numbers will look very low when you do that, but what we've learned is that that's when you're talking about true impact, not just the numbers of what you're driving.
Thank you very much, Nompilo. And I particularly like your point where you're saying it's not one barrier that you tackle at a time, but rather a comprehensive program. If you're going to provide affordability for devices, include digital inclusion, digital skills for that matter. Sylvester, yesterday when we were having a chat, you spoke to me a lot about subsidization that you've done at Vodacom and the considerations you've put in place, as well as some challenges you've observed on device financing. Could you please tell us a little bit more about that?
So thanks Naomi. Yeah, so I think for the longest time, the biggest success that we've enjoyed, I think as Vodacom and with other operators as well, is the ability to really get buy-in from device OEMs. So for the longest time, they've bought into creating products, devices that are called fit for Africa, no-frills, smartphones that really land in Africa at the right price points. And today we sit with opportunities where smartphones, entry 4G smartphones are sitting at about $30 US. However, if you consider some of the stats that were shown earlier by Kim, with households that are running on $1 US per day, you can imagine a $30 US smartphone is still unattainable for those consumers. Yeah. And as operators, we obviously do invest a bit of subsidy on these devices to ensure that they land and at an affordable prices to our consumers, but it's still quite unattainable for most consumers. And if you look at the 8 markets where we operate as Vodacom, we've got 90 million customers that are still on a 2G phone. And as much as we are seeing good growth, year-on-year growth, we add an additional 15 million smartphones onto our base, we still add another 15 to 20 million 2G devices onto the base. So from a penetration perspective, we're not really growing, and what we've been looking at is how do we actually look at the absolute numbers of consumers that are adopting internet-enabled devices. So we've done well, but there's still quite a big challenge because of the quantum of the size of the challenge that we have. If you look at 8 markets with 90 million 2G devices, it means it will take us 3 to 5 years for us to actually close that gap. Where we then transitioned to was device financing, which was obviously, is there an opportunity for us to offer devices to our consumers at prices which they can afford, daily payments, which is palatable for the consumers that we were targeting. But it has come with its own challenges. There's so many moving parts when you speak about device financing. It needs a lot of investments. As the adoption increases, you need a bigger loan book to be able to carry those customers that you're onboarding. There's issues around vetting and scoring of customers. There's issues around potentially bad debt and NPL. So it definitely is, I think, the next frontier in terms of where we are heading to, in terms of giving access to entry-level smartphones in affordable installments to our consumers, but it does need a level of investment from other stakeholders to ensure that we can scale it up.
Thank you very much, Sylvester. Sandra, I know at Axian you've been facing the same challenges and you've been doing some work towards addressing these barriers. And I remember you mentioning something around subsidy and how you're adding some discount to a segmented part of the customer base to ensure that you're actually reaching the unserved. Could you please tell us more about that?
Yes, definitely. Maybe just before that, I want to start by my conclusion. I think when we say leaving no one behind, it's not a slogan. It has to be a responsibility. Mm-hmm. And at Axian Telecom, what we truly working for is to make sure that we build a digital Africa which is inclusive and proudly local as well. It's so important. Why am I saying that is that when we started like Vodacom looking for subsidies and also looking for device financing, it was obvious that it was for us one of the best solutions as well, because it helped us to really build a product that were really fitting to the customer need. So we look for what are the income of the people, how can they be able to repay, and from there we decide to go as Vodacom on a daily repayment with 12-month tenure, which are something that people was not able to try elsewhere. So we go up to 12-month tenure to make sure that we are able to offer device at less than 25 cents per day in terms of payment. And that way we were sure that we were able to get the result. And that's yielded a significant result because we were able to sell 1,000 and 1,000 in Tanzania, for instance. I have to give some numbers. But I think 18 months after, when we do our assessment, we easily see it was good. But in reality, more than 50% of the people that take our device financing are not the underserved we wanted to address. Most of people come there and use the device financing to replace their device, replace their smartphone. It's still good for us, right? It's increasing the usage, increasing the revenue, of course, but we are missing something specifically. And that's what I would call it's not working, because we have to look for the solution in the way we build a product that will meet the target and reach the target where the target is. Because we are proud to say to all the customers, come in our shop and get the device from 25 cents. But do we have shop in rural area? And I think this is a challenge that we still have to work on as a team, work on as an industry, to make sure that we balance between subsidies, device financing, and find the right approach for our customer in rural area as well.
Sandra, I really love the way you spoke about when we say leaving no one behind. It's not a slogan. We must put deliberate effort behind it to ensure that we're actually not leaving anyone behind. And to say that even strategies like device financing, if not well curated, will not address the gap.
Yes.
And to just move on the conversation, maybe we can talk about the many pilots that we start that often look very promising, but when we go into scaling, there's a challenge. So what do you think is needed, whether from the operators, the government, or partners, to sustainably scale digital inclusion initiatives across Sub-Saharan Africa? Sylvester, maybe I'll start with you this time round.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's, and I think as we sit here as MTN Action and Vodacom, it cannot be a Vodacom problem, it cannot be an MTN problem. It has to be an industry play. And I think I'll give you an example in instances where we've had taxation on smartphones removed in South Africa, for example. However, you don't see that impact going down to the end customer because the value chain is not responding to some of the initiatives that are being done. So you need the entire industry to play along. You need the entire industry to also participate and understand that some of the interventions that are made are meant for the end consumer to ensure that we don't leave anyone behind. So I think there is an opportunity for us to stop working in silos. There's a huge opportunity for us to collaborate a bit more. And of course, there is a huge, I think, very huge responsibility that governments and policymakers can play. We are seeing that even though we've managed to get the prices of smartphones to what I would call palatable levels where you could buy a smartphone for $30, however, it lands in the DRC at $60, purely because of the logistics costs, the duties, to import duties, value-added taxes that are added onto these products, which for me should not be deemed as luxury products anymore.
Yes.
So could there be an opportunity for us to lobby more with governments around taxation? Because for me, that also sits as an elephant in the room to say, could there be more that could be done to ensure that these smart enabled devices are not seen as luxury goods anymore?
Great, great. And I really love the point that even when we get tax relief from the government, is it being passed downstream through the other players in the ecosystem to ensure the benefit is actually felt by the customer we are trying to reach? And I know, Sandra, you have experience around this in terms of how you've tried to do that from Axian point of view. Maybe you can contribute to that?
Yes, definitely. And maybe, because I need to answer to your question, not only to that point, because it's only one aspect. Yeah. I truly believe, and I may be, I'm trying not to be so hard by saying it, we don't do digital inclusion for social. It's not social, it's not charity. We do it because we truly believe it's bringing value. It's bringing value to community, it brings value to government, it's bringing value to OEM partner, it's bringing value to operator, right? So we should start, first of all, making sure that we ensure that the solution that we bring are really sustainable, come with sustainable business model. Because we were speaking device financing in that case. An operator alone can be able to finance 1 million device financing. Yeah. I'm not sure, because it's going to hit the balance sheet, right? So we need to find a solution that will be sustainable for everyone with partnership, with strong partnership, public-private sector, that will enable us to go to that direction, because it brings value to everyone at the end of the day. It brings value to the customer, to the industry, to the country as well. Taking the example of the partnership, the public and private partnership, I will give you the example of the current initiative that we are having in Madagascar with the DECIM Fund. So World Bank, associated to few private sector and as well with government, is now giving us some subsidies to making sure that we drop the price of device for the end user. And it's very important in a country like Madagascar, where the taxation goes up to 50%. When you have a device at $30, you bring it to the market at almost at 50. So it's so important government come with support, and we make sure that all the players also make sure we pass all the discount, we pass all the subsidies directly to the customer. If I'm able in Madagascar, for instance, because today in Madagascar I'm already giving 40% discount just to cope the taxation today, right? If tomorrow I can have on top of those 40%, 20% discount from the government on the duty and everything, I'm sure I will double my ability to drive digital inclusion penetration in Madagascar. So it's very simple. We need the support of all members of the industry, government, policymaker, and as a player in the market, we are going to make sure that we pass those costs at the end user as well to get more impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sandra, for your contribution. And I like what you say that when we say driving digital inclusion and reaching the underserved, including women, we are not saying charity. There's a proper commercial opportunity, as was demonstrated here by Kim. Like, to reach these people, you actually, as a business, are addressing a business opportunity for their business.
Yes.
Nompilo, could you tell us a little bit more from MTN's group about initiatives that you see we can sustainably scale in closing the gap?
So just to build on what she's just mentioned, for me, I'm very encouraged. I think I've worked at MTN now for almost 7 years. It's the first time in the past 3 years that I'm seeing true conviction from operators to come together and have some sort of KPIs that say, where are the areas where we're not competing and the areas where we can really bring true impact? Yesterday, the GSMA published a press release on smartphone and affordability. And I think for me, the point that we're making here is that we cannot do it alone. You need governments. It's an important thing to do. We need to give people, we need to make sure that people are included. So if we're gonna do that, operators bring scale. Because if we're gonna come, as we've done, all 6 of us, and we're saying the same thing, and we can get funding for device financing that we're talking about, the job becomes much better than MTN going at it alone. So I think the more we spend on looking at areas where we really want to make impact and we're not competing, I think we're gonna go far. And there were 2 press releases yesterday. It was on AI, and another one was on the topic we're having in terms of affordability of smartphones. So I think those initiatives need to move from at the top, at the G6 level with GSMA, even at the ground level when we are working together. I will harp on the point that says something like digital skills should be just done consistently by operators in markets. We should not be leaving the consumers or the beneficiaries with the problem of having to choose whether it's an Axian or a Vodacom one, when the service is really about inclusion and impact, not for commercial purposes. It helps to get to a commercial opportunity. So that's why we say development and commercial need to go hand in hand, and it's by design. Another point I wanted to make on smartphones is that we all roll out 4G enabled smartphones in all markets. There's a reason why we say we're all seeing the same problem that is not working. Giving somebody a smartphone that they cannot use, a smartphone that does not have any apps or they can't use it. The minister spoke about content. Sometimes we give people devices. They come in languages they can't understand or the languages that they can use. So there's a lot of work that we need to do as operators to come together and see how do we improve consistency of the products and the opportunities that we give people when we're talking about inclusion. Because if it's going to be sincere and it's true inclusion, it needs to be done properly. That's just my view.
Very well said, Nompilo. And I like the way you emphasize on the point that even when we talk partnership with government, what is the partnership opportunity amongst other industry players, even the operators on the ground? We have a really interesting analogy that we use at the GSMA where we say, let's not compete about the pizza bread, you know? Let's have one pizza bread, it's sufficient for everybody. And then let's differentiate with the toppings that we're putting on our pizza bread. So we are all trying to reach the same segment. What collaborative efforts can we drive together to ensure we're actually driving the impact? And this has been a really interesting conversation. And what I'd like to hear from you as a parting shot now is that if you could only pick on one barrier to tackle over the next year to accelerate digital inclusion, what would it be and what's critical to unlocking it for the most underserved? Sandra, let me start with you now.
Look, again, and I know it's important also to address the digital scale, we mentioned it, but I think where we are today, the key barrier that we have to tackle is the affordability, right? And I mentioned it before, we need to make sure that we got the right partnership with the government, we get the right partnership with finance institutions, we got the right partnership with OEM to make sure that we offer the device that will reach the country at the right price, right? We are still looking for opportunity to get those devices at $20 in the market for the customer. And in that condition, I'm sure that it will be very easy for us to move customers from 2G to 5G or to 4G, for instance. So for me, that's the barrier. So I think I can make it like a call. We want institution, we want government to support us and to just remove the tax, like we have seen it in South Africa, remove the tax for the entry smartphone. I think it's a good start. It's a very good start where we can, from there, making sure that the industry follow and we drive as much as possible the penetration in Africa.
Yeah, very well said. And what you said earlier to add on to that point is to say when government does implement these tax reliefs, it gives an operator even more opportunity to scale on what support you're adding onto that, yes, to ensure that we're actually reaching the underserved. Sylvester, your parting shots, please.
Yeah, so I think for me is how do we find opportunities to throttle the demand and supply of 2G devices? How do we get to a point where in Africa, in the next 3 to 5 years, we've got 90% smartphone penetration or 4G-enabled penetration? Because I spoke about 90 million customers within the 8 Vodacom markets, but I have not even considered those that are not connected. So we've got a big chunk of customers that are not even connected because they can't even afford the 2G device. So for me is how do we throttle that demand and supply of 2G devices to ensure that even those that are connecting for the first time connect immediately into an internet-enabled device. And I think that's where this whole topic around smart feature phones, cloud OS phones is could we, as well as an industry, see how we utilize those propositions to ensure that those that are not connected connect for the first time immediately into an internet-enabled device.
And I like what in our conversation yesterday you said we need a stepping stone device. You know, we have a goal where we want to reach, but is there an opportunity to have a stepping stone, especially for people who, if not given that opportunity, might never touch a smartphone for the rest of their lives? So that's very well said. Nompilo, what are your thoughts on this? Parting shot?
Yeah, for me, like I talked about partnerships and us coming together as an industry, I think that's where the power lies really. And I think if we partner more with governments, the opportunity is huge. I'm hoping that there's a future where we won't talk about an elephant in the room, which is taxation, where we will all be aligned in the ecosystem with governments, with everybody that's involved that says this is important. If South Africa could remove taxes, it means it's possible. But how do we scale that? And it becomes a priority for all policymakers that if we're gonna really drive digital and financial inclusion, there's responsibilities on all sides. The responsibility doesn't lie with one partner only. So for me, that is important. And I think for an MTN perspective, we're participating in all collaborative efforts. Like we are saying, all three of us, that we have identified opportunities where we are not in competition that we really need to drive digital and financial inclusion. So now the next step is just that we need to get it done. Like we need to move forward. It should move now from a press release to like an action.
Official.
Yeah, I know we say we have a lot of ideas on PowerPoint. It's about time to bring them out of the PowerPoint and into the ground to start creating the real impact. So thank you very much for your contribution, and I'm happy to say that we have some time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience to just make sure that we get full contribution from our panelists. For the sake of time, I would request that when you ask a question, make sure it's a question, make it clear and short so that we are able to address that from our audience here. So I'll take 2 questions from the audience. Anybody? Okay, we have 1 question at the front here.
Hello, hi. My name is Migisho. I'm representing Feather. It's a fintech company, and we're trying to tackle about education in the DRC. And I wanted to know what are the partnerships that both the telcos are doing to handle the education, in digital education.
All right, thank you for that. I'll take 1 more, and then we can address the 2 together. Okay, you go ahead.
Thank you to our panel for the beautiful session that we've had. My name is Joseph Atulo. I work in Nairobi for an organization called Mtoto News. For those that understand that, Mtoto means child. So my question to the panel is, you're talking about digital inclusion, and I haven't heard any one of you talk about children and how we can bring them into this conversation. So I'd really love to understand, in terms of how are you, as organizations, Vodacom, Axian, and MTN, how are you looking at ensuring that we have this, on matters digital inclusion, there's sustainability in it, and also seeing that the next generation is also being involved in this conversation? Because for us as an organization, we believe that we need to start them young. And we've done quite a number of research. The most recent one was on digital literacy, and we were training children on the same in 3 countries across Africa. And so just them were asking us and them wanting to understand how are we able to ensure that we are bridging the gap, because the children are the ones who are leading the research. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll start with the first question on partnerships to drive digital skilling. Sandra, are you happy to take that?
I'm not sure I didn't capture well the question, but I think it was partnership related to fintech as well,
education.
Right? Yes. So education, right? So today, the way we do, I think I didn't mention it at the beginning, is also that we have decided that beyond just going for massive digital skills training, we have decided now also to focus a bit more. So we do very close workshop where we go and train people on what they are really looking for. So instead of calling a mom and say, this is what you can do with WhatsApp, we truly go and present them how they can get value from WhatsApp, either from WhatsApp business, with the mobile money, with all the partners that we can have. And I think across the country today, we are trying to have multiple partners that could enable us in bringing such content and also driving such training. But we more preferable those days to go into a very close training rather than massive mass market training as we used to do in the past. So this is something that we do, and we also leverage a lot with the local content creator to make sure that what we are using to train them are more somehow relevant, much more relevant in terms of language, in terms of people that deliver the training as well. So, and we are still looking for additional partners that can help us to enrich this approach and to bring those solutions more closer to the customer in the right way.
But maybe just to add on that, I think the DRC for us, we're finding it very, very peculiar, because you asked specifically around the DRC. DRC has structural challenges, we know, and it's one of the markets that is the lowest penetration, internet penetration, smartphone penetration. Yeah. So more needs to be done on actual getting the ability for the tools for them to actually get digital learning, because you can't get digital learning if you don't have the connectivity and you don't have the smart device. So I think DRC is quite peculiar, and I think a lot more work needs to be done around the DRC in terms of accelerating some of the challenges that we see. Yeah.
I see. And Nompilo, you have anything to add to that?
No, I was just going to answer his question about children.
Yeah.
It's a topic that's very close to my heart. And so at MTN, we have a program called Help Children Be Children. And I think my colleagues are here, they can tell you where we're going to be. The next session is actually on that as a topic. So what we're looking at is that while we're talking about the internet being amazing, there's still a very dark side of it where we need to help younger people to stay safe online while we're training them to be early adopters of the internet, because there's nothing we can do about AI, it's here to stay, but we need to be responsible. So the first thing that we always talk about as a company is that for the right to be able to be connected should come with trust and safety. So it's something that's very important, and we have managed to have very good conversations with the GSMA, UNICEF policymakers, that now today we'll be launching a task force that's actually going to develop this further for the whole continent. So you are invited to come join us. It's a task force, like we're bringing everyone on, but it's a very, very important topic. And I think you've seen there are regions where there's actually, there are decisions that have been taken from a regulatory perspective that says we won't give access to children at a certain age. That's not what we're suggesting happens, but we really, really need to work together, all of us in this ecosystem, to look at how do we make sure that while children are going to be on the internet, and they are at a very early age, how do we make sure that they stay safe online?
Yeah, important issue to highlight about safety on the internet. So please welcome to join the team.
To join.
Anybody to contribute, Sandra, Sylvester, on the question?
No, but I think to contribute, yesterday at dinner with a colleague, we were discussing the same story. I mean, with the launch that's happening today of the task force, is can we create devices that are fit and friendly for children? Because I think as MNOs, we normally get a bit of the backlash when there are instances where, inappropriate content is accessed by children. So in as much as we want them to be early adopters, I think it needs to be done in a responsible way. Yeah.
So we in the task force, all of us.
We're going to do that.
All right, so maybe I'll take one last question and then we can wrap up. Please, to her.
Thank you very much. My name is Marie-Claire Dushimumukiza. I work with UN Global Compact in Rwanda. So my question is addressed to all speakers. In regard to leaving no one behind, I would like to ask you if you have strategies in place to engage your suppliers, particularly in making sure that you are achieving your goal in accelerating digital inclusivity. So how do you engage them to make sure that they set goals or they are aligned with your goals and strategies? Because as far as I know, if you have strategies in place and your suppliers are not aligned with it, it is not going to be easy to achieve it. I'm happy to learn from you. Thank you.
All right. Sylvester, maybe I'll start with you in terms of just bringing the suppliers along in driving the leaving no one behind.
Yeah, I think when I started the discussion, I said that's probably been our biggest success, I think, over the last 10 years, is that ability for us to really create products that are fit for Africa, and we've done that very well. Today, I mean, for the past 10 years, we've had entry smartphones, and then we went along the route of Kayo's devices, smart feature phones. Today we're talking about cloud AS, and that is something that we do jointly as operators going, and unfortunately, bulk of these suppliers are sitting in China. That is where the epicenter of devices is sitting at. And so going to China, sitting with potential suppliers, manufacturers of devices, and co-creating products together jointly. That has been our biggest success. And of course, throughout the value chain, how do we find opportunities to ensure that these devices land in Africa at the right price points? So that's definitely been our biggest success. And we will continue with that. But as I said, it's probably, it's not as sustainable purely because of the quantum of the problem that we have. So we need to do more. But co-creating products has definitely been our biggest success,
Yeah, and you've said right that it cannot be one stone to kill all the birds, because there's a big amount of work to be done. So that is one of the strategies amongst many other. Sandra, your contribution to this, please.
I just wanted to say that it's a continuous process, by the way, because we are keep doing it as an industry, discussing on how we can keep having the best product for the market. When we speak, what I can add there as well is that personally for us, when we decided to go bold on device financing, yes, we go to supplier. and we explained the case. So it was a very straight to the point where we explained what we are trying to achieve, what it will require in terms of investment, and we were discussing how the supplier can support us. I know we have some vendor where we have some local agreement to get some improvement, either in the payment term, either also even in solution where they were giving us some benefit if we were driving those devices to the youth population or to the women. So yes, I think all those conditions are things that we need to discuss with supplier, because when they understand where we go, definitely they're usually ready to support us. And they understand the challenge we are trying to achieve. So it's, the supplier has to be like the key partner in delivering this as well.
Great, thank you. And Nompilo?
Yeah, I think we all have the same examples, but what I can say, Ed, is that with us, when you're gonna be a supplier to MTN, standard practice, we try to make sure that our values, we put them on your contract. You understand what's important for MTN, and inclusion is one of the things. Like for instance, our technology suppliers, they do the same digital inclusion projects that we do. They go to rural communities and they do skilling, et cetera, because that's not, it's a requirement from MTN that you really do participate in the projects that drive digital inclusion as a supplier. So when it comes to safety for children, for instance, like we cannot say we want to keep children safe and then the suppliers that are gonna do the job are not doing the same. So we have found a mechanism through supply chain and all internal partners to make sure that we have some sort of checklist of how do we work as a company with our suppliers. Then you have a standardized approach across.
Great, and I think the sentiments that have come from our panelists very strongly today is to say, when we talk about leaving no one behind, we need to put real effort behind that so that it's not a slogan, but rather work to ensure that the impact is actually reaching the people we want to reach. And to do that, there are many different strategies that we need to employ, but we really have to be targeted and to say for this segment, these are the things that we need to do. And it's not one stone to kill all birds, but rather combined efforts and bringing in partnership, both from the public sector, from the partners in the ecosystem together, just joining hands to ensure that we're actually driving the agenda of leaving no one behind. I think this has been a very engaging conversation, and we have come to the end of this conversation now. I'd like to say a real big thank you to my panelists here. A round of applause, please. And to the audience as well, you've been very engaged. We love that you came to show that you really are passionate about driving digital inclusion. So a very big thank you to yourselves again. A hand clap to yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you, panelists. I think it's always nice when people are openly sharing and airing dirty laundry and sharing what hasn't worked. As an industry, there's no point keeping these things undercover. We need to learn from the mistakes of others, and we need to grow together. And I think I want to highlight just a few narratives that were, for me personally, quite insightful. So I think one, obviously we know we need to address barriers holistically, but in particular, we need to consider those segments that we know are the unconnected. We need to design for rural populations, we need to design for women, understand the barriers that they have that we need to address alongside. So not doing device affordability without doing skills, not doing skills without giving devices, and thinking about challenges like even electricity. How do we help those in rural areas be able to charge devices and these sorts of things? There was a narrative that I enjoyed today that I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have heard in other parts of the conference. The tax thing has come up a lot, but what we've heard today is that the operators are willing to put skin in the game. They're willing to join forces with the governments. When governments reduce tax, they're willing to also subsidize, they're willing to also make sure that the proposition, the value proposition of what they're putting in the market and the price points that they're putting in the market makes sense for those people we're trying to work with. And I think it's an important point because there are markets, including Rwanda, where there hasn't been tax on devices. And yet there's still a unconnected population who don't have devices. So I think we need to know that when you solve one problem, 7 others are going to rear their head. We're going to have to be ready as the entire ecosystem to step in, put our skin in the game, and start to address those other problems. And I think some of these problems are not just on the ability to pay. It's not just about the price point. It's also about the willingness to pay. Do I have the skills? Do I understand what I'm going to be able to do with the internet, with an internet-enabled device? So closing the gender gaps and the usage gap won't happen overnight, but I'm quite positive, having heard the conversation today, that this is possible when solutions are inclusive. I'll leave you with one parting thought, which is interventions that are not designed to reach underserved populations, the unconnected, like rural and women, inadvertently risk widening these digital divides. So if we're not careful, we can do what we think is something really good, and it actually doesn't have the impact with the people we really need to be reaching. So let's take these insights forward and turn today's ideas into action. We've had a lot of talk about that today, going away from the PowerPoint, and ensuring that no one is left behind in Africa's digital future. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.